They say that today's batteries don't last like they used to, that they used to last 10 years and now they start failing after 3. But a Japanese mechanic with over 30 years of experience told me a phrase that completely transformed the way I see maintenance. Most batteries don't die, their owners slowly kill them. And he was right. Most drivers don't understand how their car battery truly works. They think it's enough to start, drive, and that's it. But behind that small block of stored energy is a living system, chemically sensitive to temperature, vibration, and even your daily habits. What separates a battery that dies after 2 years from one that survives a decade isn't the brand or the price. It's the care. It's time to reveal the secrets that shops rarely mention. Because if everyone applied them, they'd sell far fewer batteries. These are tiny habits, simple, but so powerful, they can literally double its lifespan. So get comfortable because this isn't about buying a new battery. It's about learning to protect the one you already own. Number 12. Don't leave unnecessary accessories connected. One of the worst enemies of any modern battery isn't the weather or the miles, it's electrical parasites. Phone chargers left plugged in, ambient LED lights, cameras, external GPS units, radios with screens that stay on even when you turn off the car. All of them constantly consume a small amount of current even when the car is parked. It seems insignificant, but that small constant demand day after day slowly drains the battery until it's on the brink of death. Worse yet, many modern cars have electronic systems that never completely shut off. Sensors, alarms, comfort modules. So if you add connected accessories on top of that, the battery never rests. The result? After a few days without using the car, you try to start it and only hear the classic click-click of the starter motor and that uncomfortable silence afterward. That's why rule number 1, disconnect any non-essential accessory. If you use a USB charger or electric inflator, always unplug it after use. And if you have LED lights or cameras that draw power from the 12-volt system, make sure they're on a circuit that cuts off with a key. Because let's be honest, your battery isn't a solar plant. If you leave a charger plugged in all night, you're committing voluntary energy suicide. And the worst part, when you go to the shop, they'll tell you it's reached the end of its cycle. But it wasn't time, it was bad habits. Number 11. Regular cleaning of terminals with baking soda. Have you ever opened the hood and seen that white or greenish layer on the battery terminals? That crust is sulfate, the silent enemy of good electrical contact. What it does is create a barrier between the terminal and the cable, making it difficult for current to flow. It's like trying to talk to someone through a wall. The result is the car starts slower and slower, the lights seem dimmer, and the alternator works twice as hard to compensate, which accelerates its wear. The solution is as simple as it is effective: cleaning with baking soda. Mix a little baking soda with water, a tablespoon per cup is enough, and apply it with a brush or old paintbrush on the terminals. The baking soda neutralizes the sulfuric acid that causes corrosion and you'll see the foam bubble as if it were sparkling. Then rinse with clean water and dry thoroughly. After that, apply a thin layer of petroleum jelly or dielectric grease to protect the contacts. This simple gesture can save hundreds of failed starts and extend the alternator's life. Think of the battery as the car's heart. Baking soda is its preventive cardiology. If the terminals are covered in corrosion, current doesn't flow, the alternator works harder, and sooner or later, the car starts showing symptoms as if it has electrical anemia. A few minutes of cleaning every 3 months can make the difference between a battery that lasts 3 years and one that reaches 10 without breaking a sweat. And if you're someone who never opens the hood, at least check visually once a month. If you see white or greenish dust, don't ignore it. It's the sign that your battery is silently calling for help. Number 10. Check electrolyte level and add only distilled water. Many people believe that maintenance-free batteries are magical, that they never need attention. But that's not entirely true. In reality, all lead-acid batteries lose water over time due to internal evaporation. In hot climates, this loss is even greater. The electrolyte, that mixture of sulfuric acid and water, must be maintained at a level that covers the internal plates. If the level drops to low, the plates are exposed to air, oxidize, and lose charging capacity forever. It's as if the car's heart dried out inside. The check is simple. If your battery has caps, even maintenance-free ones usually have them hidden under a label. Remove them and see if the liquid covers the plates. If it's low, add only distilled water. Never tap water. Regular water contains minerals that can react with the acid and accelerate internal corrosion. And never refill after using the car. Always do it with the engine cold because the liquid expands with heat. And if the battery has sealed cells, Check that there's no swelling or deformation that indicates overcharging, a problem with the alternator or voltage regulator. Some manufacturers even sell kits with measuring syringes or hydrometers. But if you don't want to complicate things, just check the level 2 or 3 times a year. Think of it this way: a battery with balanced electrolyte is like a well-hydrated athlete. It can withstand heat, cold, and long periods without use. But a dry battery is condemned to a slow death. And it doesn't matter how much premium branding is printed on it. Number 9. Protect the battery from extreme heat. Homemade thermal insulator. If you live in a tropical country in summer, opening the hood after driving is like opening the oven while baking bread. Temperatures under the hood can easily exceed 175 F. And guess who's there absorbing all that direct heat? The battery. Excessive heat accelerates electrolyte evaporation, dries out the cells, and increases internal corrosion. It's the equivalent of putting a battery in a microwave. In hot climates, this is the #1 reason they die prematurely. But there's a simple, cheap, and effective solution: create a homemade heat shield. Just wrap the battery without covering the terminals or vents with a layer of thermal foam and on the outside, a sheet of aluminum foil. This trick, used by many drivers in Japan and the Middle East, acts as a coolant for the battery. The aluminum reflects heat while the foam acts as insulation, reducing the internal temperature of the compartment. In some modern cars, an insulating cover already comes factory installed, but in most older or economy cars, it doesn't. If you don't have it, you can make it yourself in 10 minutes. A curious fact: this practice can increase battery life by up to 30% in hot climates. And in case you're wondering, no, aluminum doesn't cause short circuits as long as you keep the poles well insulated. Just avoid the metal touching the terminals directly. Try this test. If after driving you can put your hand on the battery without burning yourself, you're good. If it feels like a grill, then as some mechanics say, your battery is already in roasted chicken mode. In a Latin summer, the hood can be an oven and your battery the main course. Number 8. Keep voltage between 12.4 and 12.7 volts. A fully charged car battery should read between 12.6 and 12.7 volts when at rest. If it drops below 12.4 volts, it's already partially discharged. And if it drops to 12 or less, it's in danger of sulfation. Sulfation is the process by which sulfate crystals adhere to the internal lead plates. With each deep discharge or each day that passes without a full recharge, those crystals grow like a layer of tartar inside the battery. Over time, that layer prevents the acid from properly touching the lead, reducing capacity and performance. That's why experienced drivers use a digital multimeter to monitor their battery's real voltage. It's a cheap tool, costs less than a pizza, and gives you the key to knowing if your battery is healthy or needs urgent charging. Here's how to use it. Turn off the engine and all electrical accessories. Place the red probe of the multimeter, the positive terminal, and the black on the negative. Read the value. Ideally, keep it always between 12.4 and 12.7. If it drops below frequently, even without use, something is draining energy: an accessory, an alarm, or an electronic module. And beware of the opposite: excess voltage also kills. If the alternator charges above 14.8, it's overcharging the cells and slowly cooking the battery. In other words, a battery doesn't die from age, but from lack of control. Just like us, if you leave it without energy, it weakens. If you overcharge it, it burns out. If you don't have a multimeter, at least pay attention to signs like slow starts or lights that flicker when you accelerate. They're the first warnings that voltage is unstable. And remember, keeping the battery within its ideal range doesn't just protect it, it also relieves the alternator, improves starter motor performance, and prevents damage to the vehicle's electronic modules. Number 7. Avoid deep discharges below 50%. Most drivers don't know that every time a lead-acid battery discharges beyond 50%, it suffers irreversible chemical damage. Technically, it still works, but it loses capacity and efficiency forever. A deep discharge is equivalent to leaving the car several days without use with interior lights on, or with the electrical system consuming energy without recharge. When that happens, the internal plates are covered with a thick layer of sulfate that can no longer be completely reversed, even with smart chargers. The symptoms are clear: the car takes longer to start, the lights flicker when starting the engine, the radio resets or loses memory. In modern cars, false errors appear on the dashboard: ABS failure, low system voltage, etc. The worst part is many believe they can resurrect the battery simply with jumper cables or a booster. Yes, the car starts, but the internal damage has already occurred. In voltage terms, a battery at 50% usually reads between 12.1 and 12.2 volts. If it drops to 11.9 volts, it's already on the brink of collapse. That's why if you're not going to use your car for several days, connect a battery maintainer or trickle charger. This small device keeps the battery charged without overcharging it, simulating the alternator's operation. And here's a comparison that will make clear how important it is to avoid deep discharges. Every time a battery discharges below 50%, it's like suffering a chemical heart attack. It can survive the first one, maybe the second, but not many more. So now you know, if your car is going to sit still, don't abandon it to its fate. Charge it, start it at least once a week, or use a maintainer. Because a battery without movement dies faster than your motivation to work on a rainy Monday. And if you thought taking care of the battery was just cleaning it and measuring voltage, wait. The next tricks don't just protect it, they can help it regenerate. Yes, as if it had self-healing powers. Because the smartest engineers and some veteran mechanics know how to wake up a battery before declaring it dead. Number 6. Monthly use of a smart charger. There's a huge difference between charging a battery and keeping it alive. Smart chargers are the most underrated tool by modern drivers. They not only help recover discharged batteries, but also extend their life by keeping them at their optimal chemical point. The secret is in float mode or maintenance mode. When the battery reaches full charge, the charger automatically reduces current and keeps sending electrical micropulses that prevent sulfation. It's like keeping the battery in a zen state, fully charged, relaxed, and balanced. During this process, the internal cells balance each other, which means none are overcharged or excessively discharged. In simple terms, all cells work at the same level, which prevents one from weakening and dragging down the others. Ideally, connect the charger once a month for a few hours, or leave it connected overnight if your car goes long periods without use. The most modern models are automatic and can remain plugged in without risk of overcharging. And if this seems excessive, consider this. A smart charger costs less than a battery replacement and can double its duration. In countries like Japan and Germany, official shops recommend regular use, especially in hybrid cars or those with many electronic systems. In summary, the smart charger is the automotive equivalent of sending your battery to a spa once a month. It comes out clean, balanced, and rejuvenated, ready for another season of heavy work. Number 5. Check alternator voltage and belt tension. Here enters the silent villain of many premature battery deaths, the alternator. Most people never check it until the car won't start. But the alternator doesn't just charge the battery. It also determines its long-term health. When the alternator delivers less voltage than necessary, the battery slowly discharges even though the car is in use. And when it delivers too much, the overcharge boils the electrolyte, damages the plates, and shortens its life. Worse yet, the dashboard doesn't always warn you. You can have an alternator working but delivering a regular voltage. To check it, just use a multimeter. Start the engine. Place the meter probes on the battery terminals. You should see between 13.8 and 14.4 volts. Less than that, the alternator or its regulator are failing. More than that, the regulator is overcharging the battery. But there's another detail almost nobody checks: the alternator belt. If it's loose or worn, the alternator doesn't spin at the correct speed and doesn't generate sufficient current. A belt should have a maximum flex of ½ inch when pressed at the midpoint. If it sinks more than that, or if you hear squealing when starting, it's slipping. And a slipping alternator charges less, which translates to a battery that dies prematurely. In summary, check voltage and belt tension every 2 or 3 months. Because often the battery isn't dying from old age, the alternator is killing it without you realizing it. Number 4. Apply petroleum jelly or dielectric grease to terminals. This trick seems so simple that most ignore it, but it's one of the most powerful. After cleaning the terminals with baking soda or anti-corrosion spray, applying a thin layer of petroleum jelly or dielectric grease creates a protective barrier that prevents oxygen and moisture from causing corrosion. Why is it important? Because corrosion acts like an invisible wall that prevents current from flowing between the cables and battery. This generates voltage losses, difficulty starting, and false symptoms of a weak battery. Additionally, when terminals are dirty, the alternator must work harder to maintain the charge, which wears out both components. In contrast, with clean and protected terminals, current flows without resistance, and the battery works relaxed without unnecessary effort. And yes, the recommended material is regular petroleum jelly. Nothing more expensive or exotic is needed, although you can also use dielectric grease, which offers the same protection with a more durable finish. Now, a warning: don't overdo it. Apply a thin layer just to cover the metal surface. If you leave excess, dust and dirt will stick and could cause the opposite effect. Here's the humorous touch. Yes, petroleum jelly. Don't laugh. It works better than many miracle solutions they sell in shops. And unlike those premium $20 sprays, this trick costs pennies and protects just as well or better. This small gesture repeated every 6 months can avoid thousands of dollars in electrical maintenance. Because what kills a battery isn't always chemistry. It's the silent oxidation that nobody cleans. Number 3. Eliminate sulfation with controlled charging cycles. This is the resurrection method. What many believe impossible, real technicians achieve with patience. Recover an old battery that still has hope. Over time, internal plates become covered with lead sulfate, a crystalline residue that forms when the battery spends too much time discharged or at half charge. That layer acts like a wall. It prevents the chemical reaction from occurring properly and useful capacity is reduced. But here's the trick: sulfate isn't permanent if you act in time. It can be reversed through a controlled slow charge, rest charge cycle. This is how expert mechanics do it. First, they charge the battery slowly with a low current charger between 2 and 4 amps. Then they let it rest 12 to 24 hours so the internal chemical reaction stabilizes. After that, they repeat the process, but with an even slower charge, maintenance mode type, for another 12 hours. This cycle of stressing and relaxing the battery helps progressively dissolve sulfate crystals, freeing the active surface of the plates. The result: a battery that many would consider dead can recover up to 90% of its original capacity. And no, you don't need a laboratory. With a smart charger and some patience, anyone can do it. Just remember, never use fast or intense charges because excess heat can deform the plates and damage the electrolyte. A veteran mechanic used to joke, saying, "Batteries are like humans. If you push them too fast, they burn out. But if you care for them calmly, they rejuvenate." So now you know, if you have a battery that seems weak, give it a chance. It might not be old. It just needs a chemical rejuvenation session. Number 1 master trick: maintain a monthly voltage check habit. And we arrive at the real secret. There's no magic formula, miracle additives, or baking soda rituals worth as much as this routine. Batteries that last 10 years aren't special. What's special is the owner who takes 5 minutes a month to check them with a multimeter or portable battery tester, which today costs less than a fast food meal. You can measure resting voltage and detect problems before they appear. If the reading drops below 12.4 volts, something's wrong. It could be the alternator, parasitic consumption, or a weak cell. If it exceeds 12.7, perfect. The battery is at its ideal point. This habit doesn't just prevent failures, it also gives you control. You'll no longer depend on surprises or the mechanic who tells you your battery is dead. We need to change it. You'll know when it needs help and when it doesn't. And best of all, by checking monthly, you can detect patterns. For example, if you see it's losing charge faster each month, it could be a sign of sulfation or hidden consumption. This trick has a curious side effect. Drivers who regularly measure their battery also end up taking better care of the whole car. It's a psychological effect. You start with a voltmeter and end up cleaning the terminals, adjusting the alternator belt, and even checking the oil. So the real secret isn't chemical or electrical, it's consistency. Because a well-cared-for battery doesn't age. It simply fulfills its purpose for years without complaining. And if you add all the previous tricks, cleaning, controlled charging, voltage maintenance, protected terminals, and smart charger use, you can achieve something that seems impossible: a battery that lasts a decade without losing its soul. Batteries that last 10 years aren't miraculous. They have disciplined owners. And now you're one of them. Subscribe, leave your like, and comment. How long did your last battery last?